So you guys requested that I go over the map, Chalet and Rainbow Six Siege, to see if I can find any lore or any real life places that it might be based off of. I found so many awesome connections when it came to Villa and when it came to House. If you haven't checked out those videos, think about doing so. But when it came to Chalet, it was pretty generic. I did reverse Google image, I did all of my nitty gritty grinding that I normally do, and I kind of came up a little bit empty handed. There was nothing of major substance that I could look at and be like, okay, yes, this connects to something. Side note though, that one room when it comes to all the music and everything changes there, so I think there might be something there. I just couldn't come up with a connection. Maybe you can. Now, I did find a possible connection to the Solar Temple story, but again, not enough to where I feel like I should go against the grain when it comes to Chalet. So on that note, we are going to be going over the commonly known connection when it comes to Chalet this week and telling the true life story of Ruby Ridge. So let's get into it. On the foggy morning of August 21st, 1992, the Weaver family had no idea that they were slowly being surrounded by the U.S. Marshals. You see, the U.S. Marshals had been stalking out their cabin for months, as the father and husband of the home, Randy Weaver, failed to appear in court for a weapons charge, as Randy was caught selling 2 illegal shotguns. Now, it's no secret that this family was very much anti-government, which is what put them on the radar even more. But I don't think anyone, including the U.S. Marshals, would have guessed what this horrible event would have turned out like. You see, when the family dog Stryker actually picked up on the U.S. Marshals in the woods, he went running. And with him went Randy Weaver, Kevin Harris, a family friend who had been staying at the property, and 14-year-old Sammy Weaver, with guns loaded. Sammy's 16-year-old sister stayed back, but then when she heard the gunfire, she knew something horrible had happened.
I thought they were chasing down a moose or a bear or something. Honestly, I had no clue that there were people with guns in the woods that day. Everything in me wanted to run down the hill and try and, protect my brother, because I knew he was down there, and I'd always been his big sister. I'd always been his protector. So there was a part of me that just wanted to take off down the driveway and make sure he was okay.
But her brother wasn't okay. And it wasn't until the family friend Kevin Harris came back up that she realized.
He said that Sam was gone, and I think my whole world fell apart at that moment.
In that short amount of time, they lost 14-year-old Sammy, the family dog Stryker, but also on the U.S. Marshal side, they lost Francis Deegan. And that was just the beginning. You see, the father, Randy, who was back up at the cabin at this point, he ended up going back down to see his son. And in trying to do so, got shot himself. Came back up to the cabin to where at this point her mom came out. It was complete chaos. And the mother actually grabbed all the kids and herded them into the cabin. And then the unimaginable happened.
I hear what is like a gunshot going off in my ear, and Mom just drops to my side. I knew what had happened to her immediately. I thought it was the end for all of us at that point.
Her mother, Vicki Weaver, died to a single bullet shot to the head, all while holding her 10-month-old baby. And by the time the news media got a hold of this story, the whole country just blew up. There were so many riots and people just demanding change from the FBI and the government in general for this horrible, horrible event. The Weaver family did eventually make negotiations and surrender after an 11-day total stakeout. But that wasn't quite the end. You see, by the time a jury got a hold of this whole entire thing and lawsuits were filed, they came down to the conclusion that the only thing they found Randy Weaver guilty for was a weapons violation. And in the end, the Weaver family did eventually get awarded $3.1 million, though that will never bring the brother and the mother back to this family. And as much as you'd like to think that, you know, they would have really learned from this, this was a year before the Waco siege, which I also did a video on, which is for the map Oregon if you haven't checked it out. And those two combined events actually ended up being the ricochet of the Oklahoma bombers. So since then, we've seen change, but this definitely was an iconic point in history for just the government and their power and how they used it. And I think they have grown a lot in terms of negotiations and maybe not coming in so power heavy. Fingers crossed. But on that note, that briefly goes over the facts and kind of the history of what happened in Ruby Ridge and how it's connected to Rainbow Six Siege, kind of. I know that some of you really wanted to hear the Solar Temple story. Maybe I will do a video on that in the future in regards to the map Chalet, as I think in many ways it's actually more in common if you go just by the Easter eggs and stuff. But either way, on that note, we're gonna call it here. I hope you guys all had a fabulous day, and as always, keep being awesome. Bye.